we're going to see several encounters, several meetings that David has on his way back, and the difficulties he has. As we saw yesterday, he has to tell Yoav he's no longer the head of the army. He appoints, with a lot of bravery, a man that was supporting Avshalom, looking even to kill David. And now we see Shimi ben Gera in verse 17 crossing, coming to meet up with the King David and being the first people with him. Okay, let's see. Vayimeher Shimi ben Gera, verse 17, ben Yamini, Hashem bachurim vayeredim nish Yehuda. The Krata Melech. So we see there are people at the same time arriving to accept David on his way back. But we see here a tremendous representation from Binyamin. In verse 18, Ve'elef ish imo mi Binyamin. V'tziva nar beit Shaul. 1,000 people from Binyamin. Tziva, the servant we met up with earlier. We'll see and find out. Did David accept what he said, that his master Mephibosheth was really going up against David? Wow, so many people crossing the Jordan to accept David. And the Tanakh says at the end of verse 18, does it mean really that the Jordan split before the king? Well, some of the Rishonim say that there's so many people crossing it that it seems like right now the waters are splitting. You know, when so many people splash the water. But it just shows that right now there seems to be a new beginning for David. People from Binyamin, some people from Yehuda. But Shimi ben Gera there as well. And Shimi ben Gera puts on a vidui act that he wants to be forgiven. We saw this briefly. We'll just see the psukim themselves. In verse 19, Va'avra havara. Okay, this tugboat is crossing the Jordan. Lavir at Beit HaMelech. There's some sort of boat, ma'abara we call it, that's allowing David to cross. Velasot atov beinav. Shimi ben Gera nafal lefnei HaMelech, and there he is. Shimi sits down, falls down in front of the king. Bavro b'Yarden, and he says, and he pleads, Vayomer LaMelech. He says to him here in verse 20, okay, Al yachshov le'adoni avon. What I did, what was that, a few months ago, by the way, I saw a Chazal that there's a respite here of 6 months from the time the war ends until David regains power. An entire of 6 months are passing. Which is a great time for a political vacuum. Don't consider what I did to you avon. Remember what he did to him. He cursed him, he blasphemed him, he threw rocks at the king. Don't consider it avon as if I did really a crime willingly. V'al tizkor et asher ha'eva avdecha bayom asher yatsa Adoni HaMelech miYerushalayim lasum HaMelech el libo. If you really analyze this pasuk, after David is now passing the Jordan on this little ferry, on this little shuttle, you might notice here a contradiction in words. On the one hand, it says Al yachshov le'avon, don't consider this an avon. But then he says, what did I do? Et asher ha'eva avdecha. I committed a crime against you. But you're saying don't consider it a crime. So what is he saying? So on the one hand, don't consider what I did to you, the action that I did to you as an avon. But it was an avon. So decide, is it an avon? Is it not a crime? So some try to explain that the day that you passed, and we said this before, what did I want to do? I wanted to belittle you, but you were like not considered the king then. And now you are considered the king. As if I would do it to you today, it would certainly be considered a crime. What I did want to do is cause you pain. I did want to cause you pain. But, I'm sorry, don't consider it because, you weren't like a king then. And that's what David accepts. And people really are a little mad at David. We can see in Chazal, Ki yada avdecha, here is his vidui in verse 21, Ki ani chatati. I really made a mistake. It was a bad thing that I did. And now, look at what I'm doing now as opposed to what I did before. V'neivati hayom rishon lekol Beit Yosef. We asked ourselves, what does he mean by Beit Yosef? Look what he says here. Rashi brings his understanding in letter Gimel on the source sheet. Rashi says, Rishon, Rashi brings L'kol Beit Yosef, Kol Yisrael Chatu. Look, Beit Yosef is a nickname for the Jewish people. And everyone was really rebelling against you. Vani Yoter Mikulam. And you could say that I even did more against you. Why? A lot of people were willing to go up to war against you, but I cursed you. In other words, what I did against you by cursing you is certainly greater than everyone. However, what I'm doing here right now to accept you, bowing down to you, I'm asking for forgiveness. And now, what's the meaning that I'm the leader of Beit Yosef? If you receive my tshuva, do you know what your gain will be? Bituchim kol Yisrael shetekablem. If all of Israel sees that you're accepting me, if all of Israel sees that you're accepting your enemies that want to support you, then you know what's going to happen? All your enemies will come forth and be on your side. Vimlav, but if you don't accept me, you yireim lashuv elachot. There are a lot of people that are going to be very reluctant to go and support you anymore. Why? If you're going to do judgment to me, then you're probably going to do judgment to others as well. Therefore, Shimi is certainly an opportunist. He's certainly trying to give logic why politically be in the interest of David. And indeed, David has certain reasons why not to do din. Really, din should be done, that he should be wiped out. Okay? And as we said, Avishai is gung-ho in verse 22. Vayan Avishai, the same Avishai that wanted to cut him up in chapter 16 and, behead him, if you remember. Vayan Avishai ben Tzruya. Tell me, do I not know that Avishai is the son of Tzruya? Of course I know his mother is Tzruya. But to tell us that he's a very hard-nosed person like we know him until now, he hasn't changed. And he says rhetorically, Vayomer, Hatachat zot lo yumat shimi? Ki kilelet Mashiach Hashem? There's a pasuk in the book of Parshat Mishpatim in Shmot, V'nasi ve'amcha lo to'or. There's a prohibition, you're not allowed to curse a prince, a president of Israel. A king is like a president. They're the same thing. And someone really should be getting death. So Avishai really is saying, someone that curses the anointed of God, you're the anointed of God, certainly he should be what? He should be put to death. However, David rebuttals all of this. Pasuk of Gimel, Vayomer, David, Mali velachem b'nei Tzruya. In other words, you have nothing to do with me. Ki tiyule hayom l'satan. Today of all days, I'm not going to allow you to be satanic. I'm not going to allow you to go up against me. Okay, and David is very clear. Notice here that the Tanakh doesn't use his name HaMelech David. Why? Because when he's talking to his nephew, he wants to talk to him like an uncle, not as a king, as if he's Mochel Kvodo. In other words, I have a grudge against you. What's good for me is not for your good. And therefore, don't mind my business. Mali velachem is like, don't mind, what do you have to do with me? You have nothing to do with me. And now we can see a few reasons why not should he be taken to death. Let's see a few reasons now what David argues. Why is it not good right now to put Shimi to death? Number one, Hayom Yumat Ish Yisrael. Okay, what's Hayom? Any different than any other day?
That's the day where he's established as a king officially.
Okay, so today is a happy day. Is a happy day. My kingdom is being renewed, and if my kingdom is being renewed, it's not a day of doing judgment to others. Okay, or as Rashi says here, Ki hayom ani melech. Today I realize I'm king. Ani melech, meaning beforehand when Shimi cursed me, it could have been that there was an interruption in my kingdom, okay, for 6 or 7 months or even more, At the time he cursed me, I was not really melech during this interim. Okay? Ki alo yadati kayom ani melech al Yisrael. The Malbim, so here we have two reasons. Today of all days, my renewal of the kingdom, and maybe I'm king now, meaning I was not king beforehand. Another two reasons the Malbim understands here, although I didn't bring it here. He says, look, if people see David revenging, causing judgment and killing people that are up against him, then what will be the clear reaction of the many of the majority of people? They're not going to get his support. They're going to be afraid he has accounts with all others. He's going to do accounts to them, and therefore, of all days, it can't be that on this day I'm going to be doing something bad. Furthermore, look at source number 5, the Yalkut Shimoni of Megillat Esther. We brought this, I think, when we learned chapter 16. In letter 5, the Midrash says, Lefi Tzafa David Shatid Leholid Mordechai. David saw in his Ruach HaKodesh, remember he's a prophet, he saw in the future who's going to come out of this person, Shimi ben Gera? Mordechai. Amar, so David reasoned the following reason. Letter A. You don't have it? I'll tell you where you have it. You have the Yalkut Shimoni. It's in here, letter Dal. Okay. He says, Hayom lo yamut ish mi Yisrael, umi nikra shemo ish. When David uses the word ish, we go back to Megillat Esther, and we know that Mordechai is called Ish Yehudi. Ruach HaKodesh he has. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, look, maybe God appeared to David, although the Tanakh doesn't say so here. But the Midrash says that God says to David, Atahi tzalta l'shimi, you saved or rescued Shimi ben Gera. Why? So that later, generations later, he'll be able to bring a tzaddik into the world from his tribe, and therefore he'll be called Ish Yehudi. Therefore, that's another reason that he sees in Ruach HaKodesh that there's a reason why not to kill him. All these are reasons that he pronounces in front of his nephew, and therefore no damage will be done. And now the section is ending. Pasuk 24. Vayomer Melech El Shemi Lo Tamut. We didn't see this in the past. That when David has not an altercation with his nephew, but when there's a difference of opinion, we see that often David succumbs to Yoav or Avishai. But here he's very clear. He's not going to die. And not only that, but Vayishava lo Amelech. He takes an oath. Of course, taking an oath makes things even stronger. That God forbid, could Avishai take the law into his hand and kill Shimi? Does it say, I'm not going to kill Shimi? Or lo tamut means you're not going to die. Not through me, not through anyone else. So when he says lo tamut, he doesn't specify by me. He specifies because of me. No one's going to kill you. You're going to be safe. And he takes an oath in this case. This is encounter number 1 with Avishai versus Shimi ben Gera. And now we come to encounter number 2. Pasuk 25, Kafeh. Umifoshet ben Shaul, Yorad likrat Amelech. Now, do you remember Mephibosheth is a handicapped person? It's hard to understand that he traveled all the way from the vicinity of Yerushalayim all the way down to the Jordan Valley. It's not a highway number 1 that's taking you down there like we have today. So the Tanakh is writing this event probably when David already arrived to Yerushalayim, and now Mephibosheth comes out of hiding or whatever, and now he meets up with the king. Okay, and he's called the king. Lo asara glav velo asas famo vebigadav lo kibes lemanayom lached hamelech adayom hashaba b'shalom. As far as the outer appearance of Mephibosheth, his appearance is that he's been in a state of maybe mourning, sorrow, regret, His clothing is not like what used to be. His mustache, his clothing is not laundered. In other words, his outer appearance looks as if he's been in mourning for the period of time David has not been in office. Okay? Now notice, that's how his outer appearance is. In spite of his outer appearance, because this is something unusual, we didn't meet up with people like this. Notice, David is so investigative. Pasuk Kavav, verse 26. Vayihi kiva Yerushalayim likrat hamelech. Okay, we see the meeting is in Yerushalayim. Vayomer lo hamelech. He has a ta'ana. He has a claim against him. Lama lo halachta imi Mefivoshet. Wow. In spite of his outer appearance, and remember, Mefivoshet is the son of Yonatan, who is the son of Shaul, right? Mefivoshet is the grandson, even though it says here he's coming from Shaul, but he's the son of Yonatan. We see here that David still has a claim against him. If you're appearing that you're supporting me, well, why didn't you join me? Okay, lama lo halachta imi Mefivoshet. So it seems that in spite of the fact that Mephibosheth is showing that he's on the side of David, David doesn't really wholesomely believe him. Now, what happened a few chapters ago? Who did David meet up with? He met up with the main servant of that tziva. He met up with the main servant, and the main servant said, my master, Mephibosheth, remains in Yerushalayim. He's supporting Avshalom. Here is a problem. The problem is, it's called Lashon Hara. Did or David not accept Lashon Hara? L'chora, by investigating him, is basically saying, I don't believe you. Furthermore, what does he reply in same Pasuk of Zayin? Mephibosheth says, Vayomar, Adoni HaMelech, Avdi, my servant, Rimani, he lied to me. He deceived me. Why? In other words, Tziva basically left me. He saddled up my donkey. Really, I wanted to join. Let's read the words. Ki amar avdecha, your servant. Here he is. Mephibosheth is submitting himself before the king. Your servant, meaning I. What did I say to my servant? Ech b'shali hachamor. Harold, get my Rolls Royce ready. Ech b'shali hachamor. Ve'erkav aleh. I'll ride on it. Ve'ilech et hamelech. And I'm going to go to the king. Why? Why can't he walk? Ki fiseach avdecha. Your servant is handicapped. In other words, what Mephibosheth is saying directly to the king, my plan was to join you. My plan was to be with you and support you. And what happened? What did my servant do? He left me. He left me without my permission, and he met with you. Okay? In other words, not only did he not do what I wanted to do, I wanted to saddle up my donkey to ride on it and join you. But not only did he not do it, but he went by himself and he lied to you. Okay? He told you things that have no basis, no truth. Okay? As we see, Vayiragel be'avdecha. We know the word Vayiragel. What is it?
Something about
Miragel.
Something
spy,
about
right? He lied to you. He did an espionage story. It's like a spy. In other words, Vayiragel ba'avdecha el Adoni HaMelech. He spied up against me, to you, my master the king. In other words, he lied and telling you that I'm not supporting you. Now, who do you believe? Who did David believe? And it is a problem. Let's see what David says. But in the middle, we see the submissiveness of Mephibosheth. What does he say about you, the king? Vaduni Amelach. He keeps on submitting himself. My master, the king. Kimalach Elokim. You're likened to an angel of God. Wow. Okay, you're like a malach Elokim, meaning you can clearly understand that Tziva deceived me. And you know what? But you do what you want to do. Vasei tov be'inecha. Do what's good in your eyes, whether for the good or for the less good. Why? Pasuk kaftet. Ki lo ayako beit avi. Ki im anshe mavet laduni amelech. Notice. He's saying that my father's house, coming back from my grandfather, meaning Shaul, everyone went up against you. Everyone up against you. And they're all what? Anshe mavet. They all deserve what? Death. Okay? They all deserve death. Okay? Of course, this goes up against only one person. That didn't go up against David. And who is that? From his father's house? Yonatan himself. So he means everyone but Yonatan. Now we remember that Shaul did not accept the greatness of David. He was full of envy, full of jealousy, and he went on for months and months of hot pursuit, going up to kill David. And people in the country believed that David was not in the national interest of the Jewish people, because he had his own army going up against him. So that continues. There's a lot of enmity still in the house of Binyamin from Shaul. And now he's saying, everyone up against you. Now, but I owe it to you. I remember that you made me like your friend. You put me up in your house. Vatashet et avdecha be'ochlei shulchanecha. Right? You boarded me. You housed me. You put me where I can be. And therefore, is there anything I should really ask for? In other words, if we understand here, I have no charity, no justice to ask for. Mephibosheth is saying, you did so much great things to me, yet maybe I don't deserve it. But I want you to know, I wanted to support you, and he lied to you. Let's read the answer of David, and you can tell for yourself what he thinks. Vayomer lo HaMelech, his reply in a very calm way. Lama tidaber od dvaracha. There's no reason to speak anymore. Amarti, I already said. Ata v'tziva tachleku et hasadeh. Tachleku et hasadeh. Gentlemen, do you remember what we learned a few chapters ago? What did David say to Tziva? It seems that he accepted the deal. Tziva is saying the truth, that Mephibosheth is not joining David. What did he award Mephibosheth? He said, Hinei lecha kol asher leMephibosheth. You Tziva, you get everything that belongs to Mephibosheth. That's what he said. He granted Mephibosheth, the Tziva, the servant, everything. And now, what do we see here? Splitting it, half and half. Why split it and not give everything to Mephibosheth? Servant doesn't need it. Maybe it's very hard for David, some explain, to clarify what is the truth. Okay? But what is true here is David is very curt, to the point. It may have right now, look, it may be a very difficult time. He's coming back into Yerushalayim. Meeting with Mephibosheth. There are a lot of people waiting online maybe to meet with him. There are decisions that have to be made. It could be right now that he has a lack of patience. He's very short. He just says what he says, and so on and so forth. That's one meaning we could say. And that would mean, or suggest what the Gemara says in Masechet Shabbat, that the Gemara says that David accepted Lashon Hara, and now he's giving half and half. He made a mistake, but he doesn't have a way to correct it or find really who's telling the truth. That's one understanding. Another understanding is, the Malbim explains, on the words Amarti. I already said it. What did I say? Meaning, my kavanah in what I said beforehand is that I meant that you split it half and half. In other words, you know what? Tziva does deserve something. He's been working the fields of the house of Shaul for years. He's been taking care of his matters. Someone who's like an aris. An aris is someone that works your field, and you give him, let's say, 50% of the yield or a different percentage. But therefore, maybe what amarti means, that's what I meant initially, to give it half and half. That's what the Malbim wants to explain. However, David's going to pay for this. Because if you look at, let's see, did I bring it? No, not on the Yud Bet. Let me see, you have part 2 over here. Can I see your page over here? No. I want to read you a Gemara Mesechet Shabbat. There's a famous Gemara Mesechet Shabbat that says the following: that when David says, when he accepted the Lashon Hara of Tziva about Mephibosheth, and here he says, let it be divided, later on in history, just another 2 generations from now, there's going to be another division, a terrible division. A bat kol, a voice from heaven came and said, Rechavam and Yeravam. Rechavam is the son of Shlomo. He was very hard in taxation to the people in Israel. People started complaining. Yeravam tried to go up against Rechavam, the son of Shlomo, and he realized he did made a big mistake. He found political exile in Mitzrayim, and then as the situation deteriorates in Israel, God appears to Achiyah, the prophet from Shiloh, and he rips up the kingdom of Rechavam. So a bat kol comes here and says, Rechavam and Yeravam, they're going to split the kingdom. In other words, because that David accepted Lashon Hara, and he said, divide the matters, that will have an impact later on in history to the Jewish people, that we're going to what? We're going to see a division in Israel, unfortunately. By the way, later on in history, in the Tanakh, we have a king called Achav. Achav, as you may know, brought in this woman from Lebanon. His wife was called?
No, wait, I'm not sure.
What? The wife of Achav. Ken. What's her name in Hebrew? Her last part of her name is Zevel, which is garbage. Zevel. Anyway, Izevel, right. Now, I don't know what Gior he did for her, or this or that, but she certainly proliferated idolatry all across the country. It was still existing, but there was idolatry all over the country, and she put actually an APB, an all points bulletin, for any prophets of Israel to wipe them out. Terrible. But on the other hand, Chazal tell us that every war that Achav went to, he won the war. Why? The Talmud asks, it's not the case in David's time. So the Talmud says, in Achav's time, I'm adding, in spite of the Lashon Hara, in spite of the idolatry, there was no Lashon Hara. People spoke the truth and didn't speak bad about others. And therefore, Achav was not defeated in any wars, and he was able to even widen the borders of the land of Israel. Here, unfortunately, during David's time, we see that there's problems with accepting Lashon Hara. And for that, we see later on there are consequences to this matter. So, at the ending of this encounter, Lamed Aleph in verse 31, Mephibosheth is so happy to be alive, and he's not killed. Vayomer Mephibosheth al HaMelech, Gam et hakol yikach. I'm so happy with the coming of David. I'm so happy to join him. I'm so happy you accept me that wasn't your enemy. You know what? I don't care if Tziva takes all of the fields from the house of Shaul. Okay? The fact that you're alive here. So we finished two interesting encounters of David. The section of Shimi and the section of Mephibosheth. Certainly they have a great contrast. Shimi was was the biggest rebeller against the king, blaspheming him, doing so many bad things to him, and yet David doesn't have him killed. Whereas Mephibosheth, who until a certain time was an Ish Shalom, the son of Yonatan, a man of the peace with him, we see that unfortunately David accepted some Lashon Hara, yet things are now ending with peace. These are two encounters. Let's see now a third encounter, Barzilai Giladi. Pasuk Lamed Bet. Uvarzilai Giladi Yarad Meiroglim. We're going flashback. We're back on the other side of the Jordan River when David has yet to cross the Jordan. And we know that there were people that were hiding David, saving his life when he was staying away from Avshalom, his son. And Barzilai Giladi was one of the greatest supporters here on the east side of the Jordan. Here he goes down, Yarad Meiroglim. It's a place next to the Jordan. Vayavor et hamelech hayarden l'shalcho bayarden. It seems here that he wants to accompany and escort David, showing good fortune. Pasuk Lamed Gimel of Barzilai Zaken Mod. The Tanakh though tells us that he's a very old man. How old? Ben Shmonim Shana. And what did he do until now? Vehu chilkel et hamelech b'shivato b'machanayim ki ish gadol u'ma'od. He's a very rich man, and he doesn't have probably many years to live. And what did he do until now? He supported, he fed David. Remember, David has a hard time. He's hundreds of people, if not thousands. Where does he find food? So here he has a tremendous wealthy supporter called Barzilai Giladi, and he saved David's life by feeding him for whatever period of time until the end of the revolt. Vayomer HaMelech al Barzilai, the king sees him. He's called the king already now. Ata avoriti. I want you to come with me. And you know what? I want to give back what you did for me. V'chilkalti otcha imadi b'Yerushalayim. I want you to come back to the capital. I want you to be with me, and I want to support you in Yerushalayim. Barzilai says to him, Vayomer Barzilai LaMelech, Kama yemei shnei chayai. How many years of life do you think I have left for myself? Ki yelet hamelech b'Yerushalayim. In other words, I don't know how many years are in front of me that I should now go spend the last years of my life in your palace in Yerushalayim. Why? Pasuk Lamed Vav, he repeats, or the Tanakh repeats, that he's an old man. Ben Shmonim Shana Nochi Hayom. I don't know if today was his birthday, but he feels the 80 years old today especially. Ha'ida ben tov lara. Look, good and bad. If I go live by the king, you know what they serve for breakfast in the palace of the king? You can imagine. The best food. Lunch, dinner. The best food they probably serve. Do you think at the, my taste buds at the age of 80 years old are going to be so special that I can appreciate the niceties that you have by the king? That's how Rashi explains. Okay? In other words, when a person gets older, his senses become more bland. He can't distinguish or discern between the good things in life that perhaps the king has. Or, do you think really I can give you good counsel? The Abar Ben El explains. That's bein tov lara, be good and not good. You think I really distinguish between the things I'm eating or drinking? Or hear the concerts that you have there, people singing there. Why should I be an imposition, a masa, a burden? So here we see the humility of Mr. Barzilai. Kimat ya'avur avdechat hayarden et hamelech velama yigmaleni hamelech hagmula hazot. Ken, in other words, I think it'll be bad for me if I pass the Jordan with you. I think it'll be bad for me if I go live with you. So, if I'm going to die on the way, I'm just going to cause you problems. And therefore, I shouldn't do what I'm doing. And he continues, you know what I'm going to do? Lamitchet, Yashav Navdecha Vamut Be'iri. I'm going to stay tight where I am. He calls himself a servant to the king. V'amut Be'iri, and I'll die in my own city. Im kever avi v'imi. If he dies there in Yerushalayim, it's an imposition to, send him for kvura. It may be not the honor of the mate. And there are people that want to, when they die, they want to be buried in their family plots and not outside those areas. V'hinei avdecha chimham. So here we see that Barzillai has a servant with a name that really is not clear to us. What type of name this is? Chimham. Hu yavor ma'adoni hamelech v'aseh lo asher tov be'inecha. In other words, on the one hand, give me permission, I'll go back to my own city. I'll die, I'll be buried by the kever of my family, which is a custom of an ancient custom. And here, the son of Barzillai, he calls him Avdecha. And you know what? My son, Kimam, he has the law of Yerusha. He has the law of inheritance. Let him inherit the gratuities that you want to give him. Let him inherit the fine life, the sparkling life that you can provide for him. What does the king say? Does he agree? Lamitet, Vayomer HaMelech, Iti Yavor Kimam. Okay. So we see the king accepting the advice of Barzillai. He'll take his son. Vani eselo tatol beinecha. I'll spoil him. I'll do whatever has to be done for him. V'chol asher tivchar alai eselach. So here we see a very deep feeling of gratitude that David has to Barzillai, that he wants to spoil as much as possible the son of Barzillai. And this is exactly what happens. Pasuk Mem, verse 40. Vayavor chol ha'am et hayarden. All the supporters, in this sense called ha'am, all the supporters are now crossing at Hayarden, the Jordan. V'amelech avar. Okay, but it's interesting who also is crossing. Vayishak amelech leVarzillai vayivarcheu vayashov limkomo. Barzillai accompanies David as much as he can to cross the Jordan, and then he goes back to his own place. Do you notice that Mr. Barzillai's name is mentioned time and time again? Can you even count how many times? Barzillai. Barzillai is like Barzillai 2, 3, 4. What do you have? 5 times? Isn't that a little extra? So the Midrash says in Bereshit Rabbah, the name Barzillai is mentioned 5 times as if it's parallel to Chamisha Chumshei Torah. What do you mean? Oh, it was the number 5? No. But anyone that provides for a great tzaddik of the generation, anyone that's supporting a tzaddik, you're feeding a great tzaddik, it's as if you fulfilled the entire Torah, the entire Chamisha Chumshei Torah. In other words, what Barzillai did, supporting David and all his army or people with him, he did an amazing thing. And we see that David is indebted to him. We see this lengthy dialogue here that, David wants to support him, but Barzillai says, I'm going to be dying soon anyway. And now he takes his son. We see a strong expression of what we call Hakarat Tov. David as something very elementary that often we skip and don't think about it, and that is recognizing good that's done to him and to pay back a favor. And now, as we come to the finale of the chapter, we're going to see some stressful situations. Pasuk Mem Aleph. After he gives him a blessing and Barzillai goes home, Vayavor HaMelech el Gilgala. Right? The king arrives on the other side in Gilgal. V'chiman avar imo. He's now a star. He's the son of Barzillai. And here we notice, V'chol am Yehuda he'eviru et HaMelech v'gam chatzi am Yisrael. Who is the first of all tribes to be supporting and passing with David? Huh?
Says Yehuda here.
Says Yehuda. Am Yehuda heviru et hamelech v'gam chatzi am Yisrael. Am Yisrael meaning the other tribes. So we see that there's something very successful here. When David appoints Amasa, when David forgives some of his enemies, we see that it's worked. Or we saw that Amasa was very influential on the tribe of Judah. We see that Judah is first of all the tribes. And there are other supporters from all the other tribes. But now we have some strife. Pasuk Membet, V'nei kol ish Yisrael ba'im el hamelech. Vayimu el hamelech, Madua genavu achachenu ish Yehuda. Vayivu et hamelech v'et beito et Yarden v'chol anshei David imo. Wow. Here it is a bad eye. People notice that the main accompaniers of David are from the tribe of Judah. And the other people of the tribes, of the other tribes, have a grudge against this. Why? What are you showing favoritism? What are you, the melech of only the tribe of Judah and not other tribes? So you see already, David has even more reason why to have gray hair. He has more troubles. But for this and more, in our next shiur.